Wow. Okay, 5.5, ecological succession is the next lesson we're going to talk about. So, ecological succession is the process of ecological change where an ecosystem or in an ecosystem where one community is replaced by another community over time. There's two types. We have primary, so this is the formation of a brand new ecosystem, and we have secondary, which would be the recovery of an old ecosystem. So I'm sure you've learned this or this sounds familiar, but the earth was not always green and easily able to sustain life. So it started off with lots of volcanoes and ash and warm temperatures. So all this ended up forming from this stuff. Okay, so that's primary succession. This occurs when a community forms in an area that's not been previously occupied. So exposed rock, lava, even melted ice, eroded sand. So places where life wasn't or communities were not intact, nothing could really live there, and then over time, a nice ecosystem formed. So this happens over a very long period of time. And we have these pioneer species. So these are the first species to kind of get the environment ready for more organisms. So they're the first organisms to grow in a new environment. And lichens and moss are common. So you can see the lichens here, and these guys actually turn rock or lava into soil. So, and it happens over a long period of time. They can grow in areas where most others cannot. And over time, these organisms decompose and release nutrients to form a layer of soil that larger, more complex plants can grow in. Once enough soil has been generated to retain nutrients, then we'll have small plants, flowers, ferns, and shrubs. So it'll start looking more green. The plants are going to further break down the rock. We're going to get more soil, and it's going to quick, like, the process will start to happen faster. The seeds from other plants, even trees, become able to grow, and over time we're going to have large plants. As new species of plant move in, now we can get some animals in the area. Birds live in trees, squirrels, things like that, depending on the environment. Organisms growing in each stage may even hinder their own survival but pave the way for future organisms. Eventually, we get a mature community, and there's not a lot of change at that point. That's called the climax community. It's a mature and stable community of plants and animals. This would be the end of succession. Okay, so secondary succession is when there was a pretty good community going on. The ecosystem was fine. There was a climax community, but something happened. So, a natural disaster, forest fire in this case. And when there's a fire, everything's kind of wiped out. But since there's already soil there, it doesn't happen over such a long period of time. So Secondary succession, by definition, it occurs in an area that was previously occupied by living organisms, but the community was destroyed by a disturbance. Farming is also another example besides fire, hurricanes, things like that. The established community is destroyed, but the soil is still there, so it takes less time for the climax community to um, reestablish. The pioneer species for secondary succession is going to be like weeds and grass. The process typically begins with weeds and grass that are able to grow quickly. And then it proceeds until a climax community is reached. And it takes a while for trees to grow. So a stable ecosystem is one that remains relatively constant and it has predictable changes. And something to think about. Where in succession would you expect to find organisms in stages that last for short periods of time or long periods of time? Shorter periods at the beginning, longer periods at the end. Why might secondary succession tend to occur more quickly than primary? It's because of the soil. So you don't have to make soil from scratch in secondary succession like you do in primary. Primary is like we're talking about sand and rocks. There's no soil for plants to grow. What kinds of organisms would you expect to find in an area where disturbances are frequent or intense? Probably grass, right? Um, Also lichen and moss. So pioneer species. I believe we are right at the end, but we have this chart for you. So we're going to compare the two. So primary succession, we're building a brand new ecosystem from scratch. We don't have any soil in the beginning. An analogy for that would be baking cookies from scratch with flour, butter, sugar, all the ingredients. An example of when this happens is a volcano erupting or a glacier melting. And the pioneer species in primary succession is moss and lichen because they're the ones that can make the soil. And you're going to get the same result in both. So mature and stable climax community. In secondary succession, we're recovering a previously existing ecosystem after a disturbance and we still have soil. So this would be like if you made cookies with pre-made dough. So you don't have the final result, but you basically have everything you need ready to go. An example of when this happens is a fire is, I think, the best example, but hurricane or if somebody levels out an area for farming. The pioneer species in this case would be weeds and grass, but you might have some moss and lichen, but we have soil. And again, mature and stable climax community is the end, and that is the end of this lesson.